they have no idea what they are talking about. They are willing to pledge or lien their own existence, to anyone and anything that may in any way disturb the current right-wing government in the center.
Namaste everybody, welcome to Chitti Media. This is your host Sharan Sethi. Today we are joined by Atul Pandeji. He's a filmmaker and a political commentator, and he has some very interesting insights to share with us, especially on Afghanistan and a lot of parallel issues that have been going on. Atulji, namaste, welcome to Chitti Media, sir.
Namaste everyone.
Atulji, how are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for calling me today.
Right, absolutely. We do look forward to the session today. And with that, let me just shoot into the first question. Kalyan Singh ji passed away 1 or 2 days ago, right from the point when we are shooting this video right now. And then he's left a huge void in the politics of not just Uttar Pradesh, but he's played a significant role in awakening of the Hindu civilization. Right. So what are your comments? And as a filmmaker, obviously our own history has not been written and recorded in a way in which our own children and future generations can benefit from it. What are your comments on this?
See, I'll actually, with your permission, I will go back a bit in history and make some comments which may be displeasing to a certain segment, but these are all facts. Not many people know that Mr. Nehru, who was the first Prime Minister of India and was the Prime Minister of India at the time when the Ram Janambhoomi problem started in Free India, he never went to any school in India. He never went to any school till the age of 16. He had no friends. He had no information about India till the age of 16. After that, he went to Britain to have his studies. When he came back, he was perpetually surrounded by people who didn't belong to India. There was no cultural perspective as far as he's concerned, with India. It is said by many that Motilal Nehru was westernized, but Nehru was Western. So giving that broad perspective to this debate, when in 1949, in December 22nd, when Ram Lalla idols appeared in Ayodhya, the district magistrate of the place had written multiple letters to the Home Ministry. And the initial reaction from Prime Minister was that there is no chamatkar, there is no magic that happens, and please take out the idols and keep them somewhere else, because it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
One letter went from the district magistrate, and he said, sir, if that is the instruction that you're giving, I will do that. But the repercussions of that are not going to be felt only in Ayodhya. It's going to be felt in throughout north of India and all over India. That was a time when Nehru buckled up under pressure, and he the only thing he did was put the lock on the premises and left it at status quo. So it was a very weak beginning, in the Free India for this kind of a thing. Firstly, totally, ridiculing the thing, and then buckling up under pressure and, putting the locks on the premises. That continued for 3.5 decades, till such time that a very famous Shah Banu case happened in where an old Muslim woman was divorced by her husband and there was no alimony for her. She finally won the case in mid-80s when Nehru's grandson Rajiv was the Prime Minister. And despite the fact that it was a Supreme Court ruling, and despite the fact that at that time, the Minister of State for Home, Arif Muhammad Khan, gave a very passionate speech in the parliament, which was more than 1.5 hours, in support of the Supreme Court judgment. When the Maulanas and Maulvis threatened Rajiv Gandhi as to this is not possible, it will not happen. So he again buckled up and he surrendered to them, and Shah Bano judgment was overturned by the mandate of the parliament, which he had a brutal majority at that time.
Right.
So that was the whole backdrop when this Ram Mandir movement had started. Then Rajiv Gandhi, because he had done something grave against the Brahmins and Hindus, so to balance the act, he decided to open the locks of the Ram temple, and even sort of in some notional way, he did the Shilanyas at that point of time. But that was it. So it was only when Advani ji had started his Rath Yatra, then the momentum had built up. Otherwise, Ram is not a Hindu god. Ram is the nationalist cultural, identity of India.
Right.
Beyond the realms of religion for anyone. So every Indian, in some way or the other, believes in Ram and the legend of Ram. There are lots of daily life examples that run around Ram. So it was at that time there was one political leader in India who had a sole motive of erecting a Ram temple, and under any cost. A very, very effective administrator that Kalyan Singh was, in addition to the fact that he was a devout Ram Janam Bhoomi supporter and Ram temple supporter. He was the first, there was an onslaught of hooliganism in Uttar Pradesh when the first time Mulayam Singh and Kashi Ram had come together to create a kind of a Samajwadi movement, and that resulted in creation of a Green Brigade. Not many people will know all these things because people don't look at what happened. But that was a time when UP had become a mafia capital of India.
Right.
So he not only crushed the entire mafia movement, which was obviously led by essentially by Samajwadi group and some Congress groups, but so he had created a lot of flutter. And when the monetary interests of certain political groups and dynasties come under threat, they always react in a very harsh way. So the whole idea was to dismantle the government of Kalyan Singh, and the atmosphere that was built around the Ram temple at that point of time, it was converted in such a way so that the government of Kalyan Singh had to go. The reason not essentially was desecration, the falling of Babri Masjid, or the the illegal structure that was created over there. The reason were multiple, because he had become a major factor in dismantling the illegal wealth creation by Samajwadis and Congress at that point of time.
Mm-hmm.
He was very clear, unapologetic about his pursuance of Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. And today, I think the world recognizes that. And I'm so glad that the BJP has gone a step forward and given him the kind of honor that a man of his stature so much richly deserves.
Absolutely. I think India will remember him and the contribution that he did for generations to come, because that has changed the social fabric and that has changed the the way we look at certain political and religious issues in India as
Yeah,
well.
if you can give me 30 more seconds on this thing. See, I mean, because I created that, the whole Nehru legacy, with India.
Sure.
So the fact remains that, immediately after independence, and because of the fact that, Nehru never related to the cultural Hinduism of India. So he actually, he lived in a world that didn't exist. There is nothing like, unfortunately, without sort of sounding too radical in this thing, the fact remains that, there is no peaceful version of Islam that is being practiced in the world. So not only, buckling under the pressure of Islamists at that time, but also the pressure of communists who totally eradicated the history of Hindustan, the Hindu Pradesh of, India.
Right.
And so I think with the Ram Janambhoomi movement, the existence of the native Indian came into being, which was totally sort of smashed to smithereens,
Yes.
right through the, the Congress rule. Yeah, so that's what my, perspective on the role of Kalyan Singh is, because I think the Hindu awakened at that time that, we have a legacy and there is something called Hindu culturalism, which India is all about.
Yes. Atulji, I'm really glad you brought up that point, especially about the civilizational awakening that's probably happening at this point because of a lot of factors. And if we were to weigh in on what is happening in our neighborhood in Afghanistan itself, you are seeing a re-emergence of a radical form of Islam, where Sharia is imposed, where women's rights are snatched away, where children don't have a future. And the worst part is that a lot of people in Uttar Pradesh, in India, are actually sympathizers. And I'm not talking about probably terror sympathizers. I'm talking about Islamic scholars and poets and known academics. Why is this happening, and what are your thoughts on this?
See, it's really ironical, when a sort of a free expressionist, which is an artist in its purest form, starts to support something that is essentially all about curtailment of expression. Sharia or radical most Islam, which is, it is, first of all, I think it'll be slightly inappropriate to say that, this is happening in Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan was a very modern society, not, too long back, just a few decades back. And it was totally destroyed by certain, practitioners of radical Islam or the supporters of radical Islam in the Middle East. Afghanistan is a geographical problem of the world because it's a neighbor of Pakistan. One of the most important things that one must consider while talking about Afghanistan is that Pakistan has never acknowledged the Durand Line. Pakistan believes that a part of Afghanistan is their territory. It is obviously Pakistan, lives in a mode where they believe they have to convert India to Islamic nation. They obviously have to they have a total desire of taking over Afghanistan. One of the gravest mistake of modern history is the creation of Pakistan, a country that came into existence because of a religion. And so when they say Pak, they, quote unquote, for the world, they pronounce it as a purest form of Islam. But the fact, the purest form of Islam, as per the, the radicals in Pakistan, is absolute, the law of Sharia, a totally controlled society, no democracy whatsoever at all. And infinite restrictions on the way of living. Afghanistan is by itself not such a big problem. The problem is Pakistan. Pakistan, in its never-ending endeavor of ruling neighborhood, has deep roots with Taliban. They've, I don't know why the world doesn't look at it this way, but they have actually, for every terrorist activity in the world, there is somewhere a root in Pakistan. And yesterday only I was going through a report which said that, Bajwa, who's the head of Pakistani army,
Yes.
had visited Afghanistan on 10th of May. And immediately after that day, maybe from 11th or 12th, Pakistani army, which has multiple sort of camouflages to enter a country. So they started entering Afghanistan. And most of the violence that has happened in Afghanistan since last 3-4 weeks is carried out under the heavy influence of Pakistan.
Right.
So the demon or the vulture here, of course, Afghanistan is a land of nomads, of warlords. But the greatest factor over there for any kind of extreme radicalization is Pakistan. So I think one has to look at it in this way. Pakistan is the spoiler over there. And right now, see, you cannot, when a certain kind of society is nomads or warlords, not from now, but for hundreds of years. So, and they are not willing to transform or do anything. I am sure that, they can find a way to live within themselves. But when a certain other nation, which is the sponsor of terrorism in this world, uses the warriors of that tribe
Right.
to fight its own wars worldwide, then I think it becomes a very brutal force
Absolutely.
against humanity. So I think the solution to the Afghan problem is not in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
A society can decide to live under the Sharia law till such time it is not impacting the lives of rest of the world. Sad and bad for the women of the country, for the educationists of the country, for the cultural and social development of the society. But even worse than that is, when you add an element of extremism and terror-linked political expansionism, I think that's what hurts the world more. And I think
Right.
a huge landmine of such activities is in the process of getting created
Right.
in the near future.
Atulji, that brings me to my next question. You've made some very, very pertinent arguments. No, it's not just the terror that we are dealing from outside, is it? Because it's not just the Taliban or the Haqqani network or the ISIS that pose a direct threat to India. Now, if you look at how the media, especially the liberal sections of the media, has behaved in some certain aspects, and also how there have been sympathizers within India who have shown a certain soft corner to such radical elements and what is happening in Afghanistan, it is actually terrible to see. And now, at this point of time, now again the CA and RC debate has come into the picture, and the opposition is saying, no, perhaps now you need to revisit the rules. So when does this hypocrisy stop, and when do we actually realize that we need to do something about it?
See, hypocrisy is never going to end, because that is what hypocrisy in a sense means. They'll find another reason and yet another reason to continue their tirade. As I was, saying, the free expressionists that an artist is supposed to mean is when that becomes a supporter of Taliban, then, the social structure has no chances left, because anything is acceptable to the people till such time that, in India's case, a right-wing oriented administration is in place.
Mhm.
The whole purpose of India, of that segment of people in India who are against the RSS ideology or the BJP's administration, these are the people who will do anything. Munawwar Rana, I mean, an artist. Artist is somebody
Yes.
who's supposed to have a sweet sort of tongue. He's supposed to, he's not supposed to say harsh words. Javed Akhtar. But these people speak like mercenaries. They speak like, they speak like, I will never call anyone an anti-national. It's a very strong word to use. But
Mhm.
they are as close to being in defiance of Indian interest as possible. And they have no idea what they are talking about. They are willing to pledge or lien their own existence, to anyone and anything that may in any way disturb the current right-wing government in the center. CAA. Now, obviously, it's a very political issue, and not many people are supposed to understand this thing very clearly. But in the hindsight, when you look at it, and the way the government did it, obviously, this all started in 2019. Okay, uh, Trump was always an advocate of pulling out the forces from Afghanistan.
Yes.
I've been always writing about this thing that, CAA, there is going to be a big disturbance in the western frontiers of India. And there is going to be a situation where there are lots of people who will be seeking refuge in India. So if you look at the whole structure of thing, 2019, India brings in CAA. 2020 is the last year of Trump in office. 2020 is the time when, Taliban American treaty was supposed to be signed. And 2020, US withdraws from Afghanistan.
Right.
So somebody in this world, which is the current BJP administration, had the vision and foresight of implementing something which was very topical and much in need. Today, there are indications from, a significant part of globe that something like CAA, many countries are considering those kind of laws. But the Modi administration had the vision. They knew what exactly is going to be happening in India's neighborhood and what kind of influx of refugees can be expected.
Mhm.
And so they created,
Yes.
this entire structure. And obviously, the people who were protesting, I mean, I'm not the only one with, a bit of brain. Everyone knew what, the administration was doing. It was trying to protect the interest of India. And they also knew. But again, when you nurture a certain kind of illiterate vote bank, and you keep them illiterate, uneducated, so that they can, just sort of carry any lie that you, spread. So those people understood the lie and they, created their ruckus. But it was a very foresightful legislation. It was meant for a purpose. And take it from me, many countries in the globe are going to adopt something like that because that is essential.
Right.
Because the new situation in Afghanistan is going to carry on for the next few years.
Right. Absolutely, Atulji. I mean, even if we were to look at the immediate refugee policy of several of the countries, including Saudi Arabia, Canada, there are elements which the CAA had adopted in principle. And these are questions that can be only answered by the opposition and a certain section of the media that's been opposing CAA for a very long time. Thank you so much for raising these pertinent questions and arguments. We would, of course, love to invite you time and again, and I hope you can make some time for us. Thank you so much for joining us, Atulji.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.